again? Okay, good. All right, all right. Should I introduce the show or? Oh, okay, all right, all right. So this is um who won the sex war? The sex that showed up. Maintaining frame, no idea about the number. That's Brian's wheelhouse. But it could equally be called maintaining sanity,
Test. Oh.
considering that this is some pretty dense feminist bloviating. Uh, I said that right, bloviating. Uh, Brian is too busy
Yeah.
to correct me.
No,
Yeah.
I think it's good now. You should be able
Okay,
to
great.
hear me and Allison on separate channels. Uh, I'm sorry, guys. I have no idea what happened with my audio settings. I thought I had it figured out, and I did in Discord and Zoom, but not in Open Broadcaster software because what we need is more layers of complexity to basically create more opportunities for problems to happen. So,
Uh,
but you guys
well,
should be able to hear me now.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and we can hear each other, so we're good to go. I just when I first read this and I read the whole thing, well, no, I didn't actually. I skimmed.
I
I
skimmed.
I I skimmed. I did skim. I was looking for verbs, you see. There weren't a lot of verbs in this. At the end of the day, you can really tell that these people are in a position of privilege because they don't actually come to a conclusion that of how to solve their problem. Only that they have it somehow, maybe, except each one seems to have their own problem, and that problem is very critical for someone to address. They don't even define who, at least from what I remember skimming. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, it's lovely to see that they can spend this amount of time talking about a problem that they don't need to solve. Let's put it that way. Most people, about if they have a problem, they need to solve it. Feminists never seem to need to get down to the bullet points of solving their problems. Just that they have the problem, and that men acknowledge this problem, and that the existence of this problem gives them the right to talk with authority on men's own experiences and what men need to do and control men's behavior, and apparently up to and including their thoughts. That's what's important here. Never solving the problem. That's how you know a problem is really important to someone, when there's absolutely no talk of solving it or how to solve it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Shall we just do you want me to do my business? Okay, so
Yeah,
if you
do
want
the
to send
spiel.
us if
Go
you want to
ahead.
send us a message, sans censorship and bonus, we get most of the we get everything but the fees from whatever you send us. Please send it to feedthebadger.com/just the tip. That is feedthebadger.com/just the tip. Someone did send us a super chow, and they managed to break the system because they literally sent an essay, and I'm afraid that I am not going to read that on air. I really apologize to you that Caddy. Uh, I'll put this in the mailbag in the patron Discord, and we can look at it and contemplate it there, but we would be spending the next 10 minutes reading this. So I
It's too
think that that's
much.
probably, it's too much. Just reading it in a little bit. Think like
Try
5 sentences
yeah,
most,
keep
max.
it
Good Twitter size, tweet
you're
size,
basically you're basically just sending in a really quick comment. You're not sending in an actual show topic. So,
Or if you do want to send in if you do want to send an entire essay, just know that it's probably not going to be read on air for simple time of restraints, but it'll go into our mailbag in the patron
yeah,
area of
or
the
you could
Discord.
just, if you want to do all that, you could just send us an email. That way you
Yeah.
don't have to worry
Well,
about
I mean, I think
breaking.
some people want us to, like, send us a tip, but also want to make commentary.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's fine if you want to send us a tip and make commentary. This is a perfectly fine way of doing it. It's just that if it's gonna take a really long time to read out, and now probably we've discussed this longer, no, well, not longer than it would have taken to read out because it is quite long, but if it's gonna be a longer one, maybe it'll end up in the mailbag and we'll discuss it in the patron Discord. So just think about maybe tweet sized for sending those in. And once again, that's feedthebadger.com/just the tip. And I do really appreciate it because it goes to support the Badger Cave, which does need to get supported, guys. So please put something in the hat for that. All right, Brian, let's
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this article from New York.
such as it is.
New York Mag.
Mhm.
Sorry, that was wrong. New York Magazine. And they have like a sort of like sub website called The Cut, and The Cut usually talks about, you know, all things kind of social justice-y. Usually it's feminist articles that I've seen on here. And the title is Who Actually Lost the Sex Wars by Erin Carmen. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into it. And, you know, like, I don't know if you have any places you just want me to jump to, because the way that these articles are usually written, it's basically really someone like that's hoping to get like a book deal, and they I think that they write articles in the way that they do so that they can like show off their, I don't know, writing skills.
I think it's an interview or something, because there's multiple people. I think there actually, Brian, it is a bunch of people having written a book. So
yeah,
books.
It's about people who've written books on feminism, of course. So
yeah, it's not going to be the most concise thing.
No,
all right, let's.
All right. 7 years ago, Rebecca Traister observed that contemporary feminism's shortcomings may lie in not its over-radicalization, because, you know, that's never the problem, but rather its under-radicalization. Because outside of sexual assault, there is little critique of sex. Feminists fought hard to get consent written into rape law, and yet yes or no has proved necessary but insufficient to meet the power imbalances that exist before anyone takes their clothes off. Want to say something to that?
Everything is submission and dominance. Everything is power. Like, and women apparently just never have enough of it. Like, they never have enough ability to destroy a man.
Yeah.
You know, like what we've seen with the Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp. 6 years, innocent man, was the abused party. 6 years it took for him to clear his name. And he still isn't. There's still a huge swath of society that believes what the media is telling them about that case. You know, there's still feminist NGOs that are supporting Amber Heard, even though she is provably the abuser. So how much power do women need? You know, how much is too much? When will feminism be satisfied? Well, when feminism will be satisfied is we can see it in glaring bright lights from the Heard versus trial case. Feminism will be satisfied when a woman who basically is the most, like, she basically walked in off the street, okay? Like, I don't think Amber Heard was going anywhere fast before she married Johnny Depp. They're going to take a woman, and she can destroy a man despite his wealth, despite his fame, despite any political position he has, despite any factor in his camp, including his innocence. That's when they will be happy. When women have life and death power over men. And don't give me this shit about the power imbalances that exist before anyone takes their clothes off. Who really had the power in that relationship between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp? Her accusation he has been trying to claw himself out from under it, despite being famous, despite being wealthy. He has been trying to claw himself out from under it for 6 years. He still isn't able to because the media still has her side. Where is the institutional privilege? You keep yapping about all the power imbalances that exist. Where is the power imbalance there? You see, this is why I believe that there are so many feminists who are dead set on burying this case and trying to insist that it's an abuser who got away with it. Because it is a glaring example, counterexample to everything they talk about when it comes to power imbalances. If Johnny Depp had institutional power, Amber Heard would never have gotten away with what she did. Because he was not only innocent, he was the abused party. And that is the biggest most like huge signpost that everything that feminists talk about is wrong. In that relationship, Amber Heard had the power. And if Amber Heard had the power in that relationship, that means all the way down, women have more power in their relationships than men do. Now, it's not, doesn't, for whatever reason, the system doesn't necessarily protect women who are up against themselves a narcissistic abuser, because narcissists are incredible at manipulating systems that don't first and foremost look for evidence. But all things held equal, women have the power in the relationship, and that proves it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm done my rant.
It's all good. Okay. So what does it actually look like to have a truly liberated sexual culture? What does that look like? I really want to know. Truly liberated sexual culture. This year has brought plenty of critiques of sex, notably in Christine Emba's Rethinking Sex, A Provocation, and Nona Willis Aronowitz's Bad Sex, Truth, Pleasure, and an Unfinished Revolution. Both books blend memoir, reporting, and feminist history to seek a better way, with starkly different conclusions. Lorna Bracewell's Why We Lost the Sex Wars, published last year, reminds us that feminism has fought on this ground before in the so-called sex wars of the 1980s. It seems intuitive that the anti-pornography feminists of that time lost culturally, politically, and legally, thanks in part to technology like Pornhub, OnlyFans, and hookup apps. But the whatever. But
Jeez, someone was riding her thesaurus hard.
Yeah, I know. But the dissatisfaction you can find almost anywhere you look suggests a more complicated answer. This conversation, originally hosted by the New York Historical Society, has been edited and condensed. You can view the whole thing here. All right.
Okay. No way. This is the edited and condensed version. Holy crap. Also, the anti-pornography feminists suggest that there were pro-pornography feminists. So basically what they're saying is one particularly camp of feminism lost, the other camp won, I guess the sex positive camp. And that means that feminists lost. You see how this is like this? There is no way you can deal with this mess. If one camp of feminists opposes another camp of feminists, feminists lose, right? That means all feminists lost. Therefore, they can appropriate the victimhood of having lost, despite one of their factions winning, to again say, yes, we're the victims of society.
Yeah.
It's like a tar pit.
And of course, the way they refer to this this loss is essentially in part, well, she knows at least it's just in part, thanks to Pornhub, OnlyFans, and hookup apps. But like, women use those things, right? Like this, like the whole thing is built on this notion that men are somehow responsible for what feminists lose or the ground that they lose. But none of this sounds like it has anything to do with men. If why don't these women, why haven't they gone to OnlyFans and protested OnlyFans? Why haven't they formed massive media campaigns against OnlyFans, against Pornhub, against hookup apps like Tinder? Well, because it would make them look really bad. Because the people who want to use it are at least half women. Yes. And the people with OnlyFans accounts are almost all women, you know? And so like, what are you going to do? Are you going to criticize women? Like that's not going to work. So you have to like, this is why they'll say, well, in part, but they won't really like take up arms against it. And maybe it's because of the sex wars of the 80s. Maybe the sex negative feminists, you know, felt that they had lost so significantly. They maybe had a moment of clarity and were like, oh shit, there are women involved in this. And if we attack the women involved in this, then we're anti-woman. And my brain, right?
But, yeah, well, this is the eternal feminist lament. They can't control women and they blame men.
Yeah.
We gave women all of these choices. They're not making the choices that we think they should do. The men are to blame.
Yeah, yeah. And OnlyFans is making women filthy, filthy rich, right? So, like, what are you gonna do? Like, this is, in many ways, this is like the world you helped make. Like,
Yeah.
because of what all that you're supposedly fighting against, and I
Well, you
mean,
destroyed the charm of the relationship between the sexes. Instead of a
yeah,
symbiosis, a cooperation, something uplifting, it became all about dominance and submission and money. And the feminists lowered the tone when it comes to the relationship between the genders.
yeah,
And they did it based on something that's easily disproven. Men
mm-hmm,
always cared about women. They have always cared about women. And society exists to protect and provide for women. Because if it didn't, the human race wouldn't have perpetuated itself. And it's like
exactly,
they want to make society into something it's not in order to actually, you know what? They don't want to make society into something it's not. They want to exploit the fact that society is arranged for the benefit of women, often at the expense of men. But I don't want to say that in reverse to the feminist order, because I think that there's a lot of instinct and desire and also personhood involved that makes it that not oppression of men necessarily until it gets to this gynocentric nonsense level. But my overall point is that they want to say society which is constructed to make sure that women are the most protected, the most provided for, at the very center of society, and they're the
yeah,
ones who are protected from the risks that are required for the continuation of society, for the simple reason that if society doesn't protect the ones who give birth from the risks, that it will not be able to perpetuate itself. Up until the 19th century, the 20th century, actually, up until the 20th century, giving birth was a highly risky endeavor. To have women then take on the risk that men take in keeping society running, all of the risks that they take in sailing the seas to find the fish or the new trading routes, in fighting to make sure that they have the resources for their society, the risks that they take in making sure that gaining those resources in terms of mining, all of that. If we had women take on the risk of giving birth and then the risk of that, your society would be annihilated. So women by necessity were put in a position of safety because childbirth itself is so unsafe for humans. So it's like a necessity. And then they turn around and say, no, society was constructed to benefit men at the expense of women. Are you shitting me?
yep,
Is that why men occupy all of the worst jobs and then have so throughout all of human history? And then they turn it from this, like I said, this symbiosis into this power struggle, this constant power struggle, this constant dominance and submission, like saying that women are oppressed by the fact that men gain from having a relationship with a woman. Like women are giving things to their partners in a relationship. Oh my god, it's horrible. Like, how can you even make that argument? Don't you want to be a benefit to your partner in a relationship? Like, don't you want that? Isn't that why you're in a relationship? And the way that feminists look at relationship is everything is so just this gimlet kind of, like, just this gimlet eye of resentment and anger and grubby constant measuring every possible. Oh, am I getting this? Oh, is he getting too much? Oh, I'm not getting enough. It's this constant unending just grinding
yeah,
inability to see a relationship as a cooperation.
yeah.
And it's
Oh, I get it. I get it. All right. So I got a super chat from Iggy Thunders, who gives us $10. Thank you, Iggy. And he says, "What's the difference between a corset and a waist trainer, or a bustle and a butt pad? We backslid into the Victorian era, but instead of dance cards, we have consent apps and Tinder." All right. Thank you for that,
well,
Iggy Thunders. Go
I'm
ahead.
going to tell you something. This tug of war between licentiousness and puritanism is not new. Like this is something women do. Okay. You know, you have a generation, the early Victorian era was a lot more liberated than the later Victorian era. It seems like things loosen up, and then the blue noses come out, they sniff out people having fun, and they're like, we're not having any of that. Prohibition, tighten those freaking, lace up those fronts on your dresses. Too much cleavage is showing. No, you can't go to those dance halls. You can't enjoy a beer in mixed company. No, everything has to be painful and judgmental and regimented and put in a ledger. And you can't give men an extra morsel of affection or consideration or gratitude. That makes you not a proper woman. Like, this is all these women are talking about here. What's proper to be? What is proper? And if you are a proper woman, then you aren't a victim of the patriarchy. You aren't a slut. You aren't a fallen woman with those bad thoughts in your head. That's all these feminists ever freaking talk about.
Yep.
At length, and with the thesaurus, in ready to pull out. It's inculcate, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how you pronounce it. All right.
So,
I
guess she's going to talk about Lorna Blackwell. Oh, it's an interview. Is that right?
Yes.
Lorna.
Yeah, I told you this in the beginning.
Yeah, okay. Who is the we and why we lost the sex wars? Well, that's a good question. Lorna says, the we is all of us. Well, that doesn't really help. Does that include me? Did I lose? Or do I not matter because I'm a man? I mean, in a very capacious sense, feminists, people who believe that sexual equality and sexual justice are important things. People who believe that there's too much sexual violence in the world and that there should be less. People who believe that there is a kind of insufficient amount of what my friend, political theorist Joe Fischel, calls democratic hedonism. Like sexual pleasure is not equally distributed. Sexual pleasure is not equally distributed.
Okay, because her assumption is that men get more sexual pleasure out of having sex with women than women do out of having sex with men, which is partially because, men seem to value women's sexuality more than women value men's sexuality. So men perceive having access to women's sexuality as gaining something, whereas women perceive gaining access to men's sexuality as not a benefit.
Yeah.
Which, there's a solution there. Maybe if we said to women, you shouldn't always have access to men's sexuality, or maybe that's a gift men give women, maybe they would appreciate it more, and then maybe they would enjoy the benefit of it more. Like
that sounds a little too practical and common sense for the person in this interview. I mean, how can you, like, on the one hand, appreciate male sexuality when it's clearly inferior to female sexuality? Like, why? It seems like that's the logic here.
How can you say that it's inferior? Okay, guys, lads and ladies, right? Lassies, or whatever you want to call them. If a man is capable of enjoying a woman to climax, and a woman is not incapable of enjoying a man to climax, perhaps women are just evolutionary failures.
Perhaps.
Seriously, maybe it's on you. Maybe it's on you. And it's like, how much do men have to take responsibility for? And let me ask you something, Lorna. Let's say a man takes total responsibility for your pleasure, but then doesn't get much pleasure out of it. Are you going to be happy with that? You'll be like, no, I didn't orgasm. I never orgasm with you. It's all about you. So I have never come once. You have never made me come once. Not once, Lorna. Not once. I bet she has several male partners who could say that to her. But it would probably cause her brain to explode.
They were faking it. They faked it.
Yeah, they faked it. I guarantee she does. They faked it, and here's the calculus that I see a lot of guys talk about. Maybe I'm not saying it applies to all men. He can take responsibility for her pleasure, or he can get off himself. And if he doesn't get off, that pisses her off more. Because she can just snicker away and say, "Oh, you're a terrible lover," in her own head, right? "Oh, he was awful. He can't make a woman come." But if he doesn't come, holy shit, will he be in for it, right? Like, come on here, come on. This is the between Cherubus and a Straits situation, like the whirlpool and the cliff situation. You know, which do you choose? Which do you choose? And a woman will expect you to get off by her mere presence. Like, she can just lie there completely comatose and you need to be able to ejaculate. You know, that has to happen. She can do absolutely nothing and you need to come. Otherwise, there is something wrong with you. You are gay or impotent or whatever. There's something flawed about you. So which do men choose? Do they choose the amount of focus it's going to require to get a person who won't make a lick of effort for herself, won't take responsibility? Because look at Lorna saying. She's essentially saying that men are responsible for women's pleasure. Not that each party brings whatever amount of ability that they can to enjoy to the actual interaction, but that somehow men are receiving more and they owe it to women that they deserve more. Once again, framing woman's needs in terms of a man's actions. You know, but like I said, what would you like? Would you like it, Lorna, if men just were like, "Yeah, I'm just going to focus on you, but I'm not going to get off. Like, I got one or the other, but not both. Not when you're lying there like a starfish."
Yeah.
Jeez. Oh man.
And what's this like?
Okay, I guess I'll say this simply. Okay. How much of this not equally distributed sexual pleasure is the fact that men take responsibility for their own sexual pleasure?
Right. Well, that's what I was about to bring up. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if I could at all be involved with someone who is talking about sex in such a materialist, redistributive fashion. Like, well, you know, like, are we keeping score, like, on orgasms? Yes. Like that, like, how many have you had this week? Like, no, I don't want that. Like, who wants that? That's so, like, it's just so unhuman. And yes. Go ahead. And but she thinks that this is fair, right? She says people who believe that there's too much sexual violence in the world, right? That's the we. People who believe that there is a kind of insufficient amount of what my friend political theorist Joe Fischel calls democratic hedonism. What the fuck is that? Oh. Okay, democratic. Okay. So what do we all decide who gets to be happy and for how long? And like, what does that mean? Like, are we voting on this?
It literally means men get too much pleasure from women.
Yeah, but they're not saying that. Instead, they're using these other terms. But like that again, that makes no sense because
does she never like, you know, your partner?
Have you had sex with a human male before? Like, what? You know, like, I don't. Go ahead.
Does she take any pleasure in giving her partner's pleasure? Like, or is it just all like I bring out the list of grievances? The other thing is that I just skated past this the first time. So, the people who believe that sexual equality and sexual justice are people who believe that there's too much. Okay, you don't get to corner the market on that, friend.
Yeah.
You are not the only human being who cares about rape. In fact, almost every human being does.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that too, 1,000,000%. I'm so sick of people like that are about to say something really reasonable that if it has to do with sex crimes or, you know, men and women or whatever, and they have to open by saying, look, for the record, I'm not a fan of rape. Like, that's some kind of radical fucking statement. Like, oh yeah, woo, me too, me too. I had no idea. But like this happens all the time. Like there's, oh, you know, just so you know, I'm not for harassing women on the street. Good for you. Just like the rest of the world. Just like everybody else.
Except the
You're
Italians.
one of us. You know, and I'm just so like, oh, I'm so annoyed with that, because I know the only reason why people do that is not just partly because they're trying to protect themselves. They're trying to like put up a shield before they make their actual controversial statement, which may not even be that controversial because we haven't heard it yet, because they don't want to upset the feminists who are ready to pounce if they like say something the wrong way, or if they don't give the appropriate amount of like, you know, like land acknowledgement, essentially, you know, like, just so you know, I care a lot about women and I don't want them to die, you know, before they actually say what they want to say. And like,
Brian, we need to confirm basic principles that we all agree with.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, oh, you know, only after that do they actually like make this condemnation and or whatever the actual comment is, and it doesn't protect them. They get attacked anyway. So it's like, well, why are you doing this? Like, it's just an absolute empty statement. It's a waste of time. Nobody cares. Like, either everyone already agrees with you because you've said something extremely obvious and you make it sound as though that position is actually the fringe one, which is insulting. Yeah, which is insulting to the vast majority of people who are like watching you say this like it's not obvious to everyone. And then you still get attacked because at the end of the day, you're going to, no matter what. So like, it's basically, and I know that there's a bit of a tangent, I apologize, but it's basically like an inversion of the person who apologizes for a tweet that he made 10 years ago that they have determined was offensive, and then they basically corner him on it, and he has to come out and say, I condemn the tweet that I made. It's that, but you're just getting in front of it, and it's so pointless. Like don't apologize, and don't
unless you've done something legitimate to apologize for.
Yeah, unless you've actually got something to apologize for. But like,
because all you're alerting to people when you pre-apologize is that you care about their opinion. Yeah, you're basically just saying, shove the knife here.
Yeah, and like, I don't know. Like, just all I'm saying is that there is something about that seems to be hinted at in here. Yeah, but it's also kind of hinted at because, again, you know, feminists are always acting as though their radical notions about how rape should be reduced in the world are like unique to them and no one else.
Yeah.
And so
it's the most obnoxious thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's like, and I realize that. And the other thing that they do that really is infuriating is they appropriate these issues and then they frame everybody outside who doesn't agree with them as being outside or against like forcing women or against like, it's like, no, and I've caught myself arguing that position, and then I stop and I say, what am I doing? Like, I'm not against legitimate claims of rape or harassment when women make them. So why am I now arguing this position? Because they have framed it and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They know they drag you into these indefensible positions by assuming for themselves, oh, we're the one who hate rape.
Yeah.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
Like,
we're
that
the
is
only
the most
ones.
hated thing ever.
Yeah. It's not virtuous.
There has never been a time where rape of men seems to be a free action, but rape of women, people didn't care about it. Never been a time. When you actually look at the realities of history, this is the most reviled crime of all of human history. And then feminists say, well, we're the only ones who care about it. All of you plebs, all of you tiny people, all of you randos, all of you little ants, you have no idea. You are constructing a horrible rape culture by your very existence.
Yeah.
Bow to your corporate overlords.
Yeah. And so they take like a short list of obvious things, and then they claim that they own that list of obvious things. So if you believe in any of those obvious things, then you must be one of them. That's how they inflate their numbers, I guess, because only feminists care about reducing rape. And of course, we're only talking about women because
Mhm.
you know we like the number of male rape victims doesn't seem to like move the needle at all, especially if, according to people like Joe Rogan, which is not an unpopular or uncommon sentiment that gets thrown around, if those men are raped by other men, then it doesn't count as rape at all. Because I guess because one guy is doing it and the other guy is having it done to him, so you know who cares, right?
Well, it's a man, right?
Yeah, it's a
Men can't be
man.
vulnerable.
It's a
But
man being raped by another man, so who gives a shit?
yeah,
So
that's one thing. And the other thing is that the rape, the numbers of male victims. First of all, you said feminists want to reduce rape. Okay,
mhm.
well then why in the 80s were they advocating for against interventions that actually reduce rape? Because if they defied feminist theory. So I mean
Mhm.
they could choose to promote their ideology, or they could choose to reduce the number of women who suffer rape. And guess what they chose? Ideology.
Yup. Yup.
So they don't care about reducing female rape victims, or at least they
Mm-mm.
don't care about that more than they care about perpetuating feminism. All right,
All right, let's continue. I got another super chat from Dean Domino 25. Gives us 4.99 and says, "Trying to remember where I saw this, but I like the quote: women's sexuality inviting, men's sexuality invasive."
Aw,
I assume that he's not saying he likes it, but I think that he's saying like, you know, it's a use
sarcasm, you know.
it's a well
We
no,
also
I
got a
think it's
super
like
chat.
a useful way to point out a really useful and simple way of pointing out the difference between the way that we view male sexuality versus the way that we view female sexuality. I think
Yeah,
that's what it
yeah, I
is.
gotcha. All right, so we got Anonymous. Anonymous sends us $5 and says women didn't lose the battle of the sexes. The feminists complain when they don't get the positions they want in the female dominance hierarchy. So they are complaining the wrong women have power. Yeah, well, in this case, they're the wrong feminists got power.
Yeah, because
Feminism
this
is having a civil war. Men are to blame.
well, yeah, men are to blame in both cases. The only difference is, you know, like I guess like in what way should we control female social interactions? And I because that's what the sex positive versus sex negative thing does, right? Ultimately, it's like men are still the enemy, men are the problem, regardless as to which camp you're in. But the difference is that should women avoid men and fear men and treat them as potential rapists, or should women use men, sleep with men, and basically just benefit from men, you know, in a direct way, while still considering them the enemy? Because that in
Mm.
both versions, men are the enemy. So it's what is sex positive feminism then? Right? Except just exploiting men for your own sexual pleasure. So neither of these things are actually humane towards men, but these are the factions. You know, it's like
Yep.
it's Alien versus Predator. No matter who wins, we lose. So all right. Anyway,
Yeah. Okay, just remind everyone, if you want to send a super chow like Anonymous just did, please send it to feedthebadger.com/just the tip. Really appreciate that, guys, very much, because it helps me afford the Badger Cave. All right, let's
all
keep
right.
going.
Let's keep going. All right. People are committed to a kind of egalitarian and sexual ethos that's the we. And I think that the sex wars was a real fecund moment for thinking about how we might
Fecund.
go about fecund.
Fecund,
I
yeah.
don't know that word. That how we
Fecund.
might go about
That's cute.
achieving some of those great feminist what desider
Was Deseratum.
de,
Okay, stop smoking your
desideratums.
freaking thesaurus.
Yeah, right. But unfortunately, we've forgotten so much of that history. And so that's why, I mean, we kind of lost, but I don't think it's over, right?
Oh God, screw off.
Wait,
Okay, can I
so
take a paragraph of this?
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to. Okay, I felt like the discursive paradigm. Discursive.
Parameters.
I felt. Okay, excuse me. This is an interview purple prose. Okay. I felt like the discursive parameters were really stifling and narrow and inadequate to the problems of sexual justice that feminism is supposed to be confronting. What did she say in that sentence? Nothing. So I was just kind of desperate to find anybody saying anything different about sex than it's good and it's fun as long as it's done in private between two consenting adults. What else is there to say about it? So I decided to turn.
That's a good question, but she's about to tell us why it's not. It's not the whole thing, and that women like her should be like in your bedroom telling you what you should and should not be doing.
Have you seen that meme with Jesus, like two people having extramarital sex, and then is there somebody who you didn't ask for consent from? You know, you asked for her consent, but did you ask for his? And there's a picture of Jesus looking grumpy.
No, I haven't seen that. I don't know if that's a thing. But
yes, it is. It is.
No, I mean, I'm sure that meme is a thing. I'm just not sure you're supposed to ask Christ for permission to bone. I'm not sure about that, but go on. What?
All right. So anyway, I've seen this meme. I've totally seen it. And but this meme, what Lorna wants is she wants to be in the place of Christ. Did you, when you were having consensual sex with your adult partner in private, did you ask Lorna Bracewell for consent? Did she consent to that? I don't think so. This is her dissertation on why she should be asked. She's like, she should be the one who determines what is acceptable in the boudoir.
Now that's nightmare fuel right there. That one thing there.
And so I decided to turn to the history of the feminist sex wars. Again, feminist civil war, men are to blame. And lo and behold, I found a tremendous amount of variety of feminist analyses of sexual politics in that historical moment. And I also found that received understandings of the sex war were really misleading and inaccurate in all kinds of ways.
So what people took away from the sex wars?
Remember,
Go ahead.
This is feminism. This is feminism saying feminists should have the right to get in your bedroom and dictate how you fuck.
Yeah.
Like this is what this is all about. Okay. The Catholic Church, Protestant Church. I'm not so sure the Protestant Church was big into that, but they had opinions on all of that business. And now feminism wants to take over that particular job. All right. Part of what we've forgotten is that all of these feminist positions that were staked out during the sex wars, and feminists did not agree on everything during this period. It's called the sex wars for a reason. You notice how men don't have an opinion?
No, ever? None of that matters.
They're just sitting there waiting for a group of women to just appear to be the winner, and then they do whatever they say.
Yeah.
But one of the things that feminists share during this time period was a suspicion of a simplistic liberal sexual politics. Yes, because anything simplistic is, whether you're talking about anti-abortion, anti-pornography feminists like Andrea Dworkin and Catherine McKinnon, or whether you're talking about feminists who I call sex radical feminists like Patrick Khalifa or Gail Rubin.
Gail Rubin, the pedophile? Sorry, but Gail Rubin, who wrote, I'm just gonna search her name really. I'll look up some of her essays while you just keep reading.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. What united them was their shared sense that the sexual politics of post-war liberalism, which was a kind of anti-censorship sexual freedom as expressive freedom, personal liberty, privacy-orientated politics, that was really inadequate and pernicious, actually, because it didn't allow people like Lorna Bracewell to pontificate on how you act in the bedroom and decide for you what was acceptable.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that's really what this is saying. How would you define, people are, you give people freedom and follow their pleasure, to follow what they want to do with a consenting adult. That's unacceptable. No. They have to do things that Lorna finds acceptable. This is basically blue noses, just getting into other people's businesses.
Mm-hmm.
just blue stockings, just nosing in there and saying, yeah, I think that your privacy not acceptable. You should be doing what I tell you to do in the privacy of your own home. It's like desire for petty control is written all over this.
Yep.
How would you define liberalism in the sexual context? Bracewell. Hugh Hefner is a great example of a figure who embodies this kind of post-war liberal way of thinking about sex and the politics of sex. The problem that Hugh Hefner begins publishing Playboy to overcome is repression. Government has been interfering in the private sphere of individual sexual freedom in ultimately unjust ways that, on Hefner's analysis, cause all kinds of perversion and pathology. So he wants to free from restraint the kind of liberty of the individual to pursue whatever erotic material they would like to in private. And it's not going to hurt anybody. Sex is harmless. Sex is apolitical when you're thinking about sex in this kind of liberal way. And the major obstacle to sexual freedom is government interference or state interference or censorship.
Wait,
Okay,
wait.
Lorna.
What's the problem with any of that?
Well, the problem is that Lorna isn't the one that you are asking for consent from prior to having sex with your consenting adult partner. Like Lorna isn't in position to ensure that you get a list of things you can't do. Like I remember watching Shadiversities. She talked to a female medieval historian.
Yeah.
And of course they all end it with, yeah, and women had it worse, because this is like anyway. But she talked about how the clergy would have lists of things to ask people if they did in the bedroom. Like literally Lorna wants to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to publish a list of do's and don'ts. And she wants to judge the hell out of people if they do and they don't. Okay. So this is the next boliviating feminist, is Nona Wilnis Aronowitz.
Aronowitz?
It strikes me that if you too want to feel like you're left out of democratic hedonism, if you're left out of the full pleasure of sexuality, you start thinking about it in these terms, like these women do, as opposed to a shared pleasure. Yes. Do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, sure. Nona Willis Aronowitz. I write in Bad Sex about how in the earliest consciousness raising sessions in 1967 in tiny East Village apartments, women were getting together and talking about their worries and their fears having to do with their gender. And one of the major perennial issues was sex. It was a very liberatory time for a lot of women because they, first of all, had the pill. I mean, the one that men invented for them. Second of all, they were less likely to be stigmatized for having sex. But these women were acknowledging that this was all still on men's terms, and that the sex that they were having was usually bad, and they felt like they lost the right to say no. Sound like ungrateful bitches to me. And
yeah,
then,
okay, so you're having sex on your partner's terms. Isn't that sort of the way it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
Or are we assuming here that men's consent is just assumed?
Well, what if, like, okay, so she's calling this a consciousness raising session. So you have like these women, they all live in the same like community. It says East Village Apartments, right? We can't even say that that is a decent sample size, but it doesn't matter because they're going to use anecdotes that help them, with their ultimate conclusion. So it's irrelevant. But like, if there are a bunch of women and they're all sitting in a circle and they're like supposed to talk about like their worries and their fears having to do with their gender, if the subject of sex comes up, then wouldn't it make sense that the one who is most likely to complain is the first one to talk about her complaints? And then like after she does that, doesn't it also encourage all the other women to do the same?
Yeah.
In fact, they just want to.
Nobody wants to be out victimed. It's like and hilarious Scottish joke. I walk uphill both ways to school, both ways, and driving. Yeah,
And they
this is
also
what
want
I've
to
noticed.
top each other. They want to have like, although I have the worst experience, right? And then it allows them to socially bond over these complaints, but we don't. And I know that it sounds like I'm basically going to say I don't believe them, but the I've seen this a bunch of times where you'll have like, and it's usually women, but it doesn't. I don't think it's exclusively women, where you'll have like a gathering and a woman will complain about something. Maybe they're at a protest, maybe they're on like some other discussion that's going on after like a speech or a slam poem or something, and they get up on stage or they get the microphone or the megaphone and they tell a tragic story about all of the oppression that they feel, and then they give the mic to the next person, and it's also a woman, and she goes up there and she tells a story and she tries to like embellish even more so that like that leaves a more powerful impression, and then the next woman comes up and she starts crying on the microphone talking about, you know, her experience. And so it just keeps like,
Building.
yeah, they just build on, because what they're doing is they're all kind of like trying to
Competing.
emotionally relate to each other while also competing with each other. And
Hmm.
if you are going to tell us about, oh yeah, I was in this, you know, consciousness raising session in the 1960s in the East Village apartments and all the women were complaining about the men in their life. Well, I don't know like how much validity I can even give that. Like, do those men not love you? Because that seems like what you're concluding. Like a man who loves his wife is going to try and make her happy, and he doesn't even need to be asked. So, like, what are you saying? That's
Yeah.
basically like why I have a hard time believing this stuff, because there are ways that you can manipulate people into telling stories that are just not true. Um, because they
Yeah.
want
What
to they want to feel like they're participating in something.
and what do the men have to say about the ability to say no to sex?
Yeah.
Because if they're saying, "Oh yeah, women have social pressure not to say no," have you considered the social pressure on men not to say no? Nana? Have you considered that? I'm guessing no. And I will answer you, and I will say that the social pressure on men not to say no is always considerably greater than women,
Yeah.
as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, I'm sorry for talking over that, but should I
Mm.
keep, was that me that was reading that? I was.
Yeah, yeah, you were.
Okay.
And then as I think as
Yeah,
the
and
years went
then
on,
I think as the years went on, the anti-porn feminists reset the term, saying, quote, "We want protection from assault and rape and misogynistic porn rather than a space to indulge our own desires," end quote. Misogynistic porn goes off by another name. It's just called porn, because if you
mm,
think about it, all porn is misogynistic porn if it makes men happy, if it stimulates men, if it titillates men. Um,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
when
no, it's true.
yeah,
I mean,
because
basically,
like
it's misogyny whenever men are happy. So
yeah, and like
because in the
feminist,
zero sum game is that
right?
means men are enjoying they sorry, it's democratic hedonism.
Yeah,
And as we can tell from the UN UN women, if men are have it worse in something, that is equality. So any
yeah,
situation where men have it worse is equality. Any situation where women have it worse is inequality, according to UN men. That's how it's so any situation in which men are enjoying themselves, if there is a thing that men enjoy and women don't, then it's inequality and it's misogynistic.
yep. And that's also why feminist porn is probably the worst porn on the internet. Probably the worst, because it
You've
doesn't.
watched it?
It no, but I've read about it. I don't know. I don't. But it's basically like anti pleasure. Like even
Hmm.
people who are really into weird fetishes, like even if I don't get that, like you know, dressing up as a baby and pooping your diaper or whatever, I don't get any of that. But I can understand that some people they have a
Hmm.
draw to that. But feminist porn, I don't think it's just it's just power, power dynamics, domination, submission, you know, but not in the
Mm-hmm.
BDSM way that some people get into. It's just like I couldn't imagine it. Like I think it's literally a woman shouting into a megaphone, "My body, my choice," at a man forever. It's like, you know, it's just that. So I don't know. All right. Anyway, and then I think, yeah, we want protection from assault and rape and misogynistic porn rather than a space to indulge our own desires. And I think that those early discussions were lost in the late 70s and early 80s discussions of sexual liberation. Pro sex feminists like my mom tried to bring them back, but this purity of understanding, what we're still trying to grapple with is, which is, how can you be sexually free in a misogynistic culture? See? How can you enjoy anything when everyone hates
How
you?
can you enjoy? How can you be a woman in a world where men just hate women?
Yes.
They've never cared about women, not once.
Yeah. Um. So pro sex. Where was I? Oh yeah. How can you be sexually free in a misogynistic culture? It's still going to always be on an oppressor's terms. So there's no that's what I'm saying. There's no difference between sex negative and sex positive feminism. It's all this. It all is built on the same foundation, so it doesn't really matter. When I read the transcripts of some of these rap sessions, oh, that's cringe. I was just like, that literally could happen today. They were talking about wanting to have sex because they wanted to and not for any other reason. Not for expectation, not because you felt bad for the guy or because you felt like you couldn't say no, but simply because you wanted to. That was in 1968. Is that really such a radical notion that you've discovered? That women sometimes don't have sex with men out of pity? In fact, I don't think they do that hardly ever. Like I'm, you know, like first of all, there's no um there's no pressure on women to have any sympathy for men if they're lonely or they're struggling or whatever. So like pity fuck is something that I don't think really happens that often.
No, I
And
think it only occurs um because the woman wants to make a man feel like shit afterwards, probably. So
maybe, yeah,
no,
or
I mean,
she actually
I'm
go ahead.
saying that somebody would have sex with someone and then but want to in the moment, but then say afterwards, "Oh, you were a pity fuck,"
Yeah,
as
yeah.
something mean,
Yeah, or as some way to essentially like disconnect yourself
belittle.
from that person because maybe, you know, like I don't know, like if you can tell your social circle that you only had sex with him because you felt bad for him, then you no longer uh are someone who is associated with that guy sexually because oh you didn't really want him, so you're like untethering yourself
Mm-hmm.
so that you can, you know, do something else. But I you know, again, there, this idea like you felt bad for the guy or you felt like you couldn't say no, like that literally means rape to them. When a woman says, well, I didn't really feel like I could say no, which I don't think women would say, but let's say they did, then feminists will say, see, that's rape because she didn't really want to do it but she did it anyway. So this is very dangerous language, very dangerous. um
Mm-hmm.
all right, so let's, and that was in 1968. Again, sexual
Mm-hmm.
liberation was going on. Women were, you know, essentially taking advantage of something that was probably always there. Like there was, if a woman was assertive and said, "I want to have sex," um, and she wasn't like, you know, a trash fire, a man will probably say, "Yes, let's do it." So it's not like a revolutionary act, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
they want to treat it like it is.
No,
Oh,
every generation before them also had sex.
yeah, yeah. It was almost like that's the history of our species, and like the when you boil it all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then there's questions for Christine Emba. Christine, in your book, you would critique that sort of liberal sexual politics. but you also think that can't be separated from the feminist movement. Seen Emba says, rethinking sex is in some ways a call to arms against our current sort of anything goes sexual culture. I wrote it to critique the idea that getting the right kind of consent, where we've gone from no means no to yes means yes, to enthusiastic consent, is the only standard that we can have for whether sex is good or not. So she critiques that. Okay. I also pushed in the book to question whether some of the assumptions that we have raised and held on to post the sexual revolution and post the high watermarks of the feminist movement are correct. Whether they are actually helping us, especially young women and men who are making their way through the world day. Or was that like from Cheers? Like making their way through the world today? Takes everything you've got. All right. Or whether they're harming us in some ways. So I wanted to ask, what assumptions are we holding that aren't serving us? Where did we think the sexual revolution should have taken us, and where did we end up? I spoke to dozens of young women and men to hear what they thought of the state of sex and our sexual culture, and even feminism today. I heard a lot of hetero pessimism and a lot about consumerism and a longing for relationships and settling for less. Many young women talked about how they identified as feminists, or at least they thought that they did, or they used to, but they, in some ways, felt that modern feminism, also known as feminism, had served them a bill of goods in some places, or was no longer as relevant as it used to be. So it's not trendy anymore. It's like it's kind of mid now. Do you have any thoughts on this? So
I think that in the over the COVID years, the amount of women who have had sex in the last year is now less than men.
really,
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's I think it's dipped below men. I'm trying to find statistics on that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, there you go. Like this is the end game of feminism is I guess generations of women who will never know what it's like to have sex. Well, it was very terrible for them to begin with, so I guess that's a net
Yeah,
plus.
I guess there
Oh,
is
feminism.
that. They have been
I mean, like,
saved.
yeah, that's that they've been women have been saying, feminist women have been saying, and women in general have been saying that sex is terrible and it's horrible and men get all the pleasure out of it. So I guess this is a good thing now that in the last 2 years, the number of women who've had sex in the last year has halved. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the number of men has decreased, but not as much. So now there are more women who are sexless than men.
Yep.
Well, I guess we can all celebrate that, and hopefully that number goes to that women who have no access to sex in a year goes down as far as it possibly can, and then maybe feminists will be happy because women will be leading utterly celibate, sexless lives. I don't know who the men will be having sex with. I guess I can guess.
Yeah.
Femboys, femboys. It'll, the only people in society, the only people winning competitions will be trans men, sorry, trans women and men, and the only relationships will be between men and femboys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, feminist future, I guess. Men will just take over everything.
Well,
Yay!
and they'll really commit to being the best at it. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean, like, think about it. I know not you, Brian, but just for guys who can be that way inclined, would you rather have a feminist woman or a femboy?
Mm-hmm.
And the feminist women, like feminist women and women who embrace feminism, are only going to get worse. It only ever gets worse with feminists. Like they
Yeah.
only ever find more and more rarefied ways to be a victim of you. Whereas the femboy probably could be a lot more appreciative. So
Yeah.
there you go. And I'm just saying that to the guys who can be that way inclined, not the super straights at all. All right.
All right.
Maybe
Willis,
take some pressure off the super straight guys. You know, take one for the team. All
Willis,
right.
I think that most men
I'll
can probably hold out. Um,
Willis. Can I do this one?
yeah.
Willis, but it's just like these women are so out of touch.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the what's happening now is that everybody is asexual and everybody's celibate. No, well, not but and it's because I think the relationship between the genders is so confused and so miserable because of the pontificating of these women. But
They,
they're getting what they want. Isn't
yeah.
that what they want? Sex is so bad for women. Well, women will lead sexless lives in the future. Willis Aronowitz says, I was born to one of those feminists who were asking, wait. No, that's wrong. Emba. We're at Emba, right?
Uh,
Christine, you
you,
reject the argument that there isn't just enough liberation in the kind of sex that people
oh
are
yeah.
having now. You say that men and
Yeah,
women
yeah,
are
yeah.
fundamentally different in their desires and that feminists need to become more comfortable with embracing that. Emba, this has changed somewhat after Dobbs, but we're in one of the most sexually free eras in history. Contraception is available. There's less stigma, very little stigma at this point around premarital sex. The age of marriage has moved much later for women than and for men. So everybody should be having a great time, and yet so many people are, in fact, not. To the point where we are in what's termed by a number of writers as a sex recession, where young people especially are simply choosing not to have sex or even or are either pushed into this place. One of the things that I heard again and again was that the liberatory anything goes atmosphere left them lost in some ways. Now that the rules are gone, there's very little understanding or direction for what they should actually be doing, how to form relationships with each other. And also in the space of total liberation, in some ways, it is the most confident, in fact, sometimes the most maligned, who are the best able to take advantage of spaces where there are no rules. I would honestly say that it's also the people who can just make a damn choice and stick with it.
Yeah. I would
You know,
also add that, like, they're saying that, oh, we created this liberatory, anything goes atmosphere, um, and they're like, it's losing people. I think that, like, if this is all that they've known, then they might have adapted. So maybe it's not as simple as that. I think that there's a number of other things. Number one, relationships are treated as disposable. So there's like, people go on dates and it usually means they're going to have sex. And it may not mean that there's anything else that comes of it, like a relationship or, a commitment or something. And the sex itself, it's fine. Like, but then if you're having a lot of it, you come to the realization that it's all kind of samey, and you're probably not getting, like the intimate payoff that, like, something more or not sustainable, but something more substantial might give you. And then when you couple that with how much pornography there is online, how accessible it is, how much it distorts people's view on what sex is supposed to be, because we're looking at, like, people whose job it is to make sex look entertaining and stimulating and exciting, and it's not really how most people have sex. Like, they don't go around swinging from monkey bars and shit. And I think that it creates a distortion, and I think that in many ways we have, like, kind of sexually burnt out people. So they just see so much of it. And I've noticed this with young men especially, even though they still have their libidos, they still want to meet women, they still want to be involved in a sexual relationship. But all of this stuff with OnlyFans and girls twerking on TikTok and all of this exposure, I think, is actually giving men a pretty low value view on women as potential partners, not as people they want to have sex with, but as actual, like, people they want to share. And I think that that's, like, they're not going to say this, but I think that it seems to me that men, especially the Zoomers, they're looking for uh, intimacy. They're looking
Mm,
for, they want the hand holding. They want the dating stuff. If you look at the kinds of things that they share online, you will see it. Like the weebs will share clips of anime characters that are like in love with each other, and they're like they hold hands, or one kisses the other on the forehead or something like that's what I think they want. And I think that um a lot of women probably want that too, but there is a kind of social pressure to be like sexually independent and aggressive that comes from other women, and I think it's throwing men off because I don't think they're interested in that. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but based on what the Zoomers are doing, just looking at them, the men, I think that's why. I think that's what they want. I think they are looking for something like this whole article, like kind of makes me cringe because it's only about sex as an end in and of itself and sexual pleasure as an end. Like it's being treated as very materialist. They're basically saying that, like, we need to have equal intensity and number of orgasms for men and women, otherwise we haven't like appropriately redistributed pleasure. And it's like that's not natural. That's not the way this works. And the fact that you seem oddly focused on that, you seem to think that if you can like just make all of that equal, you'll feel better. And it's like,
mm,
no. Like the problem is that you are you are looking at half of the population as though they're your enemy, and that they have no good intentions for you. They don't want to see you happy, and you're demanding that they take care of you, while also trying to convince yourself or continue to convince yourself and others that they have no interest in doing that, when all those guys want is like a sweet girlfriend. And of course, if you say that, they'll say that, oh well, that's just like expecting to put women in a box, right? Like you can't do that, right? And I think that's really the problem. I think that women have mostly destroyed the sexual market, and men are either just not involved anymore, or they're just escaping into their own fantasies, which are more about, well, like I said, closeness and intimacy than sexual pleasure, because that stuff is like, it's finite. It's not like
mm,
it's not.
mm.
I don't think that it has the endurance to last, someone's entire life. Like I just don't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And the funny thing is that I think men want the women in their life to be happy, and they're
absolutely.
happy when they're happy. I mean, if it's a normal guy, not
Mm,
like not a sociopath or a narcissist, and there's nothing of a recognition of this in this, except for exploiting it while denying it exists, like you said. All right, so this Emba goes on to, I'm going to just paraphrase because it's getting boring. Originally, sex positive meant something specific and was actually coined by Nana's mother, Ellen Willis, in an essay called Lust Horizons. It was saying that, yes, women's sexuality should be recognized, shouldn't be quashed as a way of punishing men or punishing the patriarchy. Okay, so this is the perennial problem. If you're going to use sex as a tool to control men, it's hard to enjoy yourself at the same time.
yeah.
Ugh, what a horrible place to be in, isn't it? And then she goes on to talk about so that women and men, okay, so they had this belief that women and men want sex in the same way and generally go after it in the same way. Equality looks like having as much sex and is being gung-ho about sex as men do. Well, are men really that gung-ho about sex as you think? When in fact, many people, women and men, don't find that liberating at all. I spoke to a lot of young women and men who feel that in an atmosphere where total liberalism, total positivity was expected, there was no room to interrogate or criticize their desires. Not criticize as in marginalize, but ask, where does this desire coming from? Do I need to indulge in it? What does it say about society at large? Can I even say no to something? Am I allowed to dislike something about being conservative? without being a conservative or a bad feminist or a prude or a repressed person. And of course, the example she uses is a woman who came to her asking for some advice. And she said she was dating this guy. He was great, except that he choked her sometimes during sex, and she didn't like that. But she consented to it because, that this is what people are doing these days. She's a modern sex positive person. Um,
Well,
have you, first thing I would ask her is, have you actually told him you don't like it?
yeah.
Like, seriously, this could be solved as easily as I don't like it. I was like, oh, geez, I thought women liked that because my last few partners did or asked for it. Like,
Yeah.
and the other problem I'm having with this is that the choke fucking is the new feminist thing, or it was a few years ago. So I don't know if this is something that
You mean
actually
like
happened or if it's
the
another.
Django Meshi? Didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So it's been sort of a thing that's been spiraling around people's stories. So
Yeah.
I don't know if this is something that someone legitimately asked her, or if it's just something that she's bringing up because it's the new victimhood fad. But
Yeah.
here's the thing: if you're a woman and you're with a guy who's choking you, you don't like it, tell him.
Yeah.
Okay?
And like, I don't know. I think it's worth asking. Like, when you say chokes, do you mean, because like sometimes uh people will just pantomime that, like you just
Yeah,
put your hand
yeah,
on her neck, but you don't
yeah,
actually choke her out. It's like that's actually far more common, to be honest. And
yeah.
are you just responding to your program to see men as murderous because you have these negative assumptions about them? And so when you're having sex with your man and he puts his hand around your neck, you presume he must be choking you, even if you don't feel like you're losing your breath.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I
there's that
mean,
other thing, but ultimately, like, and this is something that I've seen with a lot of young people, and man or woman, somebody does something you don't like, and they're like, "Oh, that's rape." No, okay,
yeah,
you just tell
exactly.
them, "I don't like it." If they do it again, then you have a case.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't know, so the first thing I would say to her is, don't make this into a political movement. Just ask. He might be like, "Yeah, no, I don't like it. Actually, I just thought, women were into that," because maybe he's having the same thoughts. He's like, "I got to do
Yeah,
this, otherwise my girlfriend's going to lose interest in me. She's going to think I'm not passionate or something." You
right,
know,
right.
it.
And other women, like I'm sure he's had experience with other women who did like that. So, like, how does he know?
Yes,
I mean, you
yeah. How
guys
does he
probably
know?
should be working out what you like and what you don't like anyway before you even start having sex. But like, I don't know. Yeah,
So she didn't feel like she had any recourse to say no. So I'm guessing she didn't. Like,
mhm.
this idea that everyone is an individual autonomous and we shouldn't push people to explain themselves or change their desires or change their behaviors or question themselves has left us in a place where we are unable to critique and have real discussions about what good actually looks like. I think
Mm.
this is overblown. This is massively overblown. Like, they're basically saying, well, women aren't feeling like they can say no when men do. Well, I think women can say no. I think
Absolutely,
they
they
still think
can.
so, and they should just be told, if you
You
don't
know,
like it, just say no. And it's what will likely happen is the guy will be, if he's a decent guy, he'll just stop. Okay. If he
mm,
isn't, he'll continue. And then to leave.
yeah, exactly. Um,
Okay.
the thing that
Well,
I
you want to
think
do the next
that,
one?
well, yeah, I can do the next one. Um, I think this is another thing that a lot of feminists miss about men. I think that the act itself, the act of sex is it's obviously like intimate and rewarding if both people want to be there and everything else. But I think that these people treat male sexuality as something that it only exists to be self-serving. It only exists to please men in that moment. They don't think about their partner. They're not trying to please their partner. And the truth is, I just don't like. Obviously, that's not it at all. And I believe that, just like you said, what men want the most from women is their consent. And
And the happiness, really.
yeah, but that is suggested in the consent, like that a woman is saying, "I want you," to be the
Mm-hmm.
one I'm going to be with. And you know, and as the man is trying to please her, so if, let's say, he's doing well and she has an orgasm, that is only, and she's vocal and she tells him, right? It's not like she's keeping it to herself or anything like that. That only encourages him to want to please her more, and it's sort of treated as an extension or a confirmation of the consent. So, like, a woman who's having a good time and, you know, gets off, I think that that is more encouragement for men. And I think
Mm.
that it turns men on a lot too, like to
Mm.
see that they are making this woman happy, right? So what I'm
Mm.
saying is that I think that that's actually more um, what men get out of sex, is like the way that they essentially, you know, the more they please a woman, the more they please themselves. It's like, it's meant, I think it's meant to work that way. Um, and I think that the way that this woman frames it, which a lot of feminists and maybe even a lot of women frame it as, it's just something that men are getting for themselves. Like there's some, you know, it's like this self-serving thing. And I just don't think
Mm.
that's true. I think that it's really unfair to say that.
Yeah, it is. It's well, all of these women's attitudes towards men are incredibly unfair.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I would say to them, I would say to every feminist who has this kind of an attitude towards men, perhaps you should choose another scoop on the gender spectrum and just leave men alone
Yeah,
and
maybe
stop
that's
talking
best.
about them.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Until you do, I will continue to push back against this casual misandry and assumptions about men.
Mhm.
Okay,
All
I
right.
guess do the
So,
next section. There are too many
yeah, is
sections.
it I spoke a lot? Is that it? I spoke to a lot of young women.
No, 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 no. We
Oh,
were
is it
past that.
originally? Oh, we're past that?
Yeah, Lorna, do you
Oh,
hear
oh,
a parallel with
Lorna, do you
Christine's?
hear? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Critique of our very different contemporary landscape with what these feminists were writing about in the 80s. Bracewell. Partly, their big beef with pornography was that they felt it was intrinsically dehumanizing. For Andrea Dworkin, the film Deep Throat really made quite an impact. She was very animated around how oral sex, a kind of sadistic enactment of oral sex, was becoming normalized through pornography, which I think rhymes with Christine's story about choking becoming like, oh, well, that's just a thing that people do without having a conversation prior about whether or not we might enjoy this, right? Where I think they would diverge maybe with Christine, you were talking about there's a kind of intrinsic difference in what women want out of sex and what men want out of sex. Oh, they're gonna tell us what men actually want, guys. I don't know that the anti pornography feminists who I write about would go with you there. Anti pornography feminism, as it was originally conceived by people like Robin Morgan or people like Andrea Dworkin, they would vehemently reject the kind of biological essentialism underpinning that kind of claim. Where I think where they would take it as they take it is, they would say, that is a really strange sentence. Look, not everybody wants the kind of heterosexual script. And it's not just that men want it, women don't. But it's like, we need to be open to people wanting a variety of things with regard to sexuality, and we should cultivate a sexual culture that facilitates and enables people to pursue those sexual aims. What? 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 We want to be open. I mean, that's what we do. Like, what do again, you're making a claim that the world should be the way that it actually already is, and then you're acting like you just made this up. I just discovered something. We should find out what people's sexual preferences are and let them have those sexual preferences. And if we're not compatible, then maybe you're not right for each other, and you should find somebody who likes your sexual preferences, and I will do the same. That's a
Mm.
revolutionary idea, lady.
Well, yeah, well, you can't do that because it all hinges on the idea that men are not like it requires good faith reading of men, right?
Yeah.
Like, it just requires men are human beings, not the demons of your imagination. Like,
Why are they calling this like this is the heterosexual script? Like that has
Well, you
nothing.
notice how this is something that I noticed in this, that heterosexual, well, because it's between men and women, right? It's heterosexual
Sure.
desire. And what I notice about this is if the world is libertine in their sexuality and people can have the sex that they want. And incidentally, how did Christine, this woman who's being choked by her boyfriend during sex, how did Christine interpret people can have the sex they want in, oh, I can't actually speak up about, like, why do these feminists always encounter the biggest goddamn doormats when it comes to women? You know what
Mm-hmm.
that is? The big doormats are the ones who empower feminist rhetoric. Because
Oh
women who
yeah.
are like, yeah, I didn't like it. I told him and he never did it again. They don't want that story. They want the story of the woman who interpreted sexual liberty to mean, oh, I do whatever my partner wants.
Yep.
Really, that's how you interpret sexual liberty? And then the feminists can turn around and say it's sexual liberty that's to blame, and also men. And it's like, maybe the problem is that your example is an unusually spineless woman.
Yeah.
Can we say that? Like, can we honestly just go there and say the world should not be constructed for the spineless? Okay,
That would be a good idea.
like, maybe the Christines in the world need to be told, okay, did you tell your boyfriend? Okay, you didn't tell your boyfriend, try telling him. All right,
Mm-hmm.
might be as simple as that. Then if he continues to do it, even though you said you don't like it, you'll leave him. The end. Move on with your life. You cannot empower the spineless. You cannot construct a society in order to make sure spineless women actually are able to get what they want, because that means everybody else has to abide by the worst, most ridiculous rules in existence.
Yep.
And really, the only thing you can say to a person like Christine is just stand up for yourself. And I'm tired of all of this, like, oh, you can't do that because it's victim blaming.
What are you a
Look,
victim of?
what is she a victim of? You don't even know if she's a victim of her boyfriend. You don't even know what he's thinking until she stands up for herself and she actually articulates her desires. Because literally, he could be thinking, oh, well, I thought women like this thing because it's like everybody. I mean, they could be equally spineless.
Yep. I got a couple super chows.
Oh,
I'm gonna
we got
read
super.
them.
Yeah, we
Chows.
should. We
Um,
didn't even read those two, right?
no, I'm about to. Yeah, I already put done in there
Okay.
because I was gonna do that now. Miss Ann of Art gives us $10 and says, "Noms for the Badger." Thank you, Miss Ann. And then Miss Ann of Art gives us another $10 and says, What's a real kink shamer? Some of us have desires of the non-vanilla variety." Yeah, well, and of course, if men don't give you that without having to ask, it's because they hate you for one. Okay.
Yeah, and here's
So,
the thing: every
hmm,
woman has different desires. So
yeah,
if you don't stand up for yourself, like, he's probably operating off of several ex-girlfriends with the choking. I
yeah,
I have actually never heard of guys who are really into that in and of themselves. They just do it because they think women are into it. Maybe there are men who are into it in and of themselves, but I'm pretty sure even they would be like, if you don't like it, I don't have to do it.
yeah,
Or maybe we can
or
save it for special occasions. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, or they saw it, because I think that people try to reproduce what they see, and men may have seen it in a porn, and they thought the woman in the porn seems to be having a good time. I might try that, right? Because they're trying to figure
Mhm.
out what is going to bring more pleasure. And one of the things that I think is true about women, sexually, is they like this, they get this, not all of them obviously, but they get this euphoric feeling, uh, about men who essentially lose their humanity around them. Like their
Mm.
desire for women is so overwhelming, it's so overpowering, right? Their desire to have sex with that woman, it means that he basically turns into like a beast. It's like, why are so many women into these like romance novels where, you know, the man is like out of control because he's so overcome with lust. He's so overcome with desire that he just tears her clothes off, right? And that's a
Mhm.
massive turn on for a lot of women. It's a big turn on.
It's also
So
it's also actually a
what?
turn on for both men and women. That kind of a
Yeah.
scenario.
Yeah. So
The
like
the snoo scenario.
exactly. So, and this is why it's such a popular cliche in those
Mhm.
romance novels. And so like maybe the choking thing, which could just be simulated, it might not even been real, right? That's like a part of that. Like, and I think that they're it's just like men are if they're not told by women what they like, they're gonna experiment.
Mhm.
You know, and I think that like it's a little bit dangerous because you don't know like where her line is at, and so it's probably best
Mhm.
to just you don't communicate about this stuff. But
Mhm.
I'm just, you know, thinking like I generally don't think men want to choke out women. Like I don't I don't think that, you know, unless again you have a weird hang up, you know, from something else, and hopefully your partner has the same hang up as you, and then you guys can be
Mhm.
compatible together over there. But like I don't think generally that is like typical for men. And I don't like the reason why I'm saying that is because I don't like the framing in this piece, because they're bringing it up as though it's a typical example, and we
Yeah.
don't have like we don't have the full story. We don't know if there was a conversation. We don't know if he was really like taking, you know, like she was turning purple and he didn't care. Like we don't know any of that, but we're supposed to simply take what this person is saying at face value and then draw
Mhm.
conclusions which are essentially set up to be as uncharitable to the man as possible.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do the next section.
All right.
Nana, you write that a sort of capitalist liberal approach to sex is unsatisfying, but you come to a different conclusion about gender difference or whether or not certain kinks or habits are inherently harmful. Willis Aronowitz. I think both my mother and I would agree that missing anything from the past having to do with heterosexual relationships is extremely, extremely dangerous. Feminists from the second wave were old enough to remember what it was like when there was maybe a little more chivalry, or probably not an expectation that you would get choked in bed. But that came with all kinds of other bribes and other regulatory expectations that I'm happy do not exist anymore. I gravitated to a more committed relationship, partly in reaction to these soulless, not very vulnerable sexual experiences I was having in my early 20s. And I think that it was a bit of a cautionary tale. Okay. If you get men and women to relate on the most basic terms as strangers, then you are going to see like how to describe this. Strangers don't care that much about each other. All right. That's just the
Mm-hmm.
way it is. Um, and you're going to see a very stereotypical type of sexuality happening that is soulless and has nothing to do with men. It has to do with the fact that you're expecting relations on a certain level, a lack of intimacy. Um, and here's the thing: they're saying that hookup culture is bad for women. They're saying that committed relationships are bad for women. You know what the common denominator is? They basically just think everything's bad for women.
Yeah.
And how is that goddamn possible? More women want commitment than men. Wrong. Right throughout off the bat. More men than women want commitment in their 20s. By the time they're 30, in their 30s, more women than men want commitment. But I don't think that's an intrinsic difference. It's a socialized difference. It's not necessarily going to make them happy if they eventually do find that. I think that what does make people happy, and this is what I explore in my book, and also what Christine does acknowledge, is that no matter what kind of sexual encounter or romantic encounter you're having, you do need to drum up a huge amount of vulnerability for it to be worth anything. And that's a huge ask, again, in a misogynist culture. You know, in a misogynist culture, you women would have to actually accommodate men's opinion.
Yep.
Like in not even a misogynist culture, in a non-misandrist culture, you wouldn't be getting away with, oh yeah, let's just assume the worst of men and the worst of men's culture and the worst of the collective decision making of men, which is what you mean when you say misogynist culture. There's a lot of self-protection going on because a lot of men are, again, not that they don't want to be vulnerable, transcendent encounters, but they're socialized not to engage with them. That they don't want vulnerable, transcendent encounters, but they're socialized not to engage with them. What does that even mean? Like, do you women in this panel, do you have any idea about any of the vulnerabilities that men have? Like, or do you think that men should cry but have nothing to cry about?
Yeah.
And so why, as a 22-year-old woman trying to have sex, would you be vulnerable in that way? What does that even mean? How do you go from, there's a lot of self-protection going on because a lot of men are, again, not that they don't want to be vulnerable, transcendent, but they're socialized. So men are not socialized to be vulnerable, and that's why women aren't vulnerable. Does that make sense to anyone? Unless you're saying that the only vulnerability that's supposed to be there is the woman's, and men aren't. What you're actually saying is men aren't socialized to be sensitive to women's vulnerabilities. And in a way, I guess women are socialized to be sensitive to men's vulnerabilities. Is that what you're trying to assert here? This is incoherent. So why, as a 22-year-old woman trying to have sex, would you be vulnerable in that way? It's a really huge risk, and sex is always going to be a huge risk, I believe. And even in a utopian culture where there was no misogyny. Where is the discussion for how sex is supposed to serve men? Is there a legitimate discussion about how sex is supposed to serve men? And if this discussion of how sex is supposed to serve men is not legitimate anywhere, except I guess in your visions of locker rooms or in the corners where creeps, come together to whisper shit that nobody agrees with, how is it that we live in a misogynist society? I mean, you are having a discussion on a huge platform about how sex is supposed to serve women. I have never seen a discussion on how sex is supposed to serve men at all, ever. I mean, we don't even have that discussion. First of all, because it's ridiculous. Men are individuals. But second of all, because, this, well, actually, first actually covers the second too. But like, this is a discussion. This is literally on a huge platform, media platform, huge reach, a discussion about how sex is to serve women. And in a society where you literally cannot, in polite society, have a discussion about how sex is supposed to serve men. Right. And we live in a misogynist culture. Oh.
Yeah,
And
precisely. Oh, it's all good.
It's still a risky encounter where you really do have to surrender to the other person and really trust them a lot. And I'm guessing that your entire edifice of believing in a culture in which men loathe women and want to destroy them, they just what all they want to do is tie women to train tracks and watch them get dissected. That your belief system might be the thing that's making it difficult for you to be vulnerable in a sexual encounter. Like, that might be your issue. No, perish the thought. It's the fact that men are so evil.
Of course.
All
right. Should we?
No,
We're almost at the end.
Yeah, we're
I'm
almost at the
shocked.
end.
I didn't think we were gonna make it. It's so like painful. This is like,
It is.
guys. Help.
I hope we're making it entertaining with our jokes.
Yeah, it's so bad. Like this. It's like, let's get a bunch of women together that agree, like 100%,
basically
on
that men are to blame.
That it's all men's fault, but they disagree on like little things, and then we're gonna pretend like this is a debate and that we're actually moving towards some kind of useful conclusion. It's just it.
And
I feel like I've aged.
Yeah,
during this show,
like
I feel like I'm 5 to 7 years older than before when I started.
Throw a coin.
I think I need like what do you call that? Metamucil. Like I just like, and I
Yeah,
just
you
want to
need to
like,
clear yourself out.
yeah, and I want to
Just
get
loose it out.
just go and put a hot water bottle on my head and just go to sleep for like 10 hours. Um,
Yeah. No, I
all
could
right.
use a nap too. All right, I'll finish this paragraph and maybe
Okay.
we'll continue on.
Okay.
And so I think that gets to the other issue, which is some kind of sex ultimately damaging no matter is some kind of sex ultimately damaging no matter what. I think it really depends on the context. It can't just be in a vacuum of like, is it choking always wrong? I don't think that BDSM approached correctly and in the right context is intrinsically unethical. I guess what
That's most of us. Again,
yeah,
they're saying obvious shit, you know.
yeah.
And like, why aren't the other women mad about that? Because she's saying it, and the way that when people say obvious things, and then they say, "Well, I agree that this obvious thing is obviously true," they're kind of saying, "Do you?" Because like, why are you even? If everyone's on the same page on that, then why are you even saying it if you're not trying to suggest that some people in the discussion are not on the same page? And then, you know, maybe that's the case, but I'd be a little insulted if I was sitting at that table and she said, well, what adults do, you know, BDSM is okay under the right. It's like, yeah, yes. I mean, it's not my thing, but yeah, of course.
Okay.
Okay.
Shall I continue or do you want to take the next paragraph?
Emba, I'm
Yeah, good.
I'm not actually trying to necessarily be a total biological or gender essentialist and say that women only want soft sex and men only want really intense choking related sex. Yeah, but that's stupid. Like I think that women are more into the dangerous sex. I think I
Yeah,
think
I mean, men don't need that to have danger. They're having sex
yeah,
with a woman.
yeah, they're already
It's
having sex with
inherently
a
dangerous.
woman. It's actually
I mean,
dangerous.
the woman could already like end up sending him to jail.
Yeah,
You know,
and again, you know, it reminds me of the Louis C.K. the stand-up comedian. He did this bit where he was talking about like one time he like took a woman home. This was before he got, you know, in trouble for jerking off. Um,
mm,
but like he brought a woman to his place or something, and they were having sex, and she was asking him to essentially simulate rape sex. Like, oh, I just want it, and her whole thing was she just wanted it to feel dangerous, right? And his whole thing was he was like, fuck no, like I'm not gonna do that, are you kidding me? Like, you know, because he was essentially saying like, look, if I even if we're faking, if I simulate raping you because it turns you on, I could go to jail, you know. And the fact that he ended up like essentially getting canceled because he asked a couple of women that were in his hotel room for some reason if they would be willing to watch him jerk off, and they said yeah, sure. And so it was all consensual and everything, and he still got screwed. I just, it's really funny that you know, again, like, not that doesn't surprise me, like that, you know, women, they can have like these kind of, they like the idea of, like I said before, a man who loses control and like tears into her and stuff, and she wanted that, and he was like, hell no, like that's dangerous, are you kidding me? Like you know. And it's a pretty funny little bit because it's so true. So all right, anyway.
all I know is that this is like watching aliens discuss stuff.
Yeah, it is, right? What do you know about humans? Well, the male of the species is obviously terrible. All right, anyway.
But I do
But
think
I do think that one of the flattenings that has happened in some ways is the postmodern feminist movement is this suggestion that men and women should go after sex in the same way, and that their vulnerabilities, as you were pointing out, are the same. And in fact, there is a difference. And I think that this is something that earlier feminists were aware of. When it comes to sex, women can get pregnant after sex, and the consequences for that tend to be different as compared to those who can't get pregnant after sex.
yes, the
Except that,
consequences.
yeah, go ahead. I was gonna say it, but you say it.
No, your consequences are different. Yes, because you can separate consent as a woman. You can separate consent to sex from consent to parenthood, and there is a court precedent that says that men can't. Women can, men can't.
Yep.
So men do not have reproductive rights. That's the
Yep.
difference. I mean, and also some mechanical stuff that's, I don't think we're allowed to say that women have to deal with, because now we have trans women. So there you go.
And we have birthing persons. All right, but anyway, the original feminists really did have a revolutionary idea in mind, smashing a patriarchal system that centered male preferences and toxic value systems and assumed that the male system and the male body was the default, and replacing it with a new version that also allowed in women and their distinctive concerns and valued and protected those. And I
Are
think,
you, again, feminism made men care about women, folks. That's what this is requiring you to believe.
yeah,
That feminism made men care about women. Men never cared about women. Disregard all those marital manuals from like the Victorian era onward that discuss the importance of the female orgasm in for marital happiness. Disregard all that crap. Men never cared about women or women's pleasure or making women happy. They were just utter brutes until feminism came around, weaponized nagging, and made men care about women. It's feminism's doing. Feminism constructed a female caring gland in men's head and then injected it into feminism. Did a whole bunch of genetic engineering, social engineering, a whole bunch of Pavlovian conditioning of all men in the West, not with the brown people. The brown men still hate women, but all the white men. Feminism managed to just genetically engineer them to care about women suddenly now. This
yep,
is bullshit. It is so much excruciating. There are a lot of things I despise in this world, but nothing more than open, abject bullshit. And that is what feminism is founded on. There is absolutely zero likelihood that feminism somehow invented men caring about women, compared to feminism actually exploiting men's already existent care for women. Like, which is more likely? Let me give you a clue. Feminism didn't invent men caring about women. Men always cared about women. Feminism invented this new form of men caring about women that's controlled by feminism.
yes,
And why did it do that? Because men care about women so much. It could probably be, if we figured out how to harness it as a fuel source, we would never need gasoline ever again. That much men
mm-hmm.
care about women. And
Mm-hmm.
feminism figured out, wow, if we get ourselves into that dynamic and we fuck with it, boy, howdy, we can get a lot of power and money out of that.
Yep. And they
And
do.
and what is the cost? Well, you know what? I mean, Cassie J basically explained it. The cost to the average woman of feminism: shitty sex, shittier relationships, and joy. And now men are just walking away. They're just walking away. They're just
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? We're done. You know, we're not even going to try to pursue you. All that, I'm pretty sure that celibacy now that we're seeing among women, it's just that men are just like, you know what? Unless you select me on Tinder, I'm not even going to bother. I'm not going to come. I'm not going to approach you. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to talk to you at work. I'm not going to talk to you at school. I am not going to talk to you in the train station. This is what you wanted. No. So all of the women who are shyer or more doormatty or don't go out and they are now celibate. Congratulations. If you're a
Yep.
shy woman, if you're a wallflower, you are now celibate.
Yep.
Enjoy your life.
So anyway, patriarchal system, right? And I think
Blah, blah,
what
blah.
many have observed in this moment is that the most modern, most recognizable forms of feminism to younger people, the sort of girl boss and lean in feminism, is what you might actually call neoliberal feminism, actually ignored that and that ask and settles for less. So,
What?
yeah, she's saying that the current feminism, she's labeling it as a neoliberal feminism, and says that this kind of girl boss lean in feminism actually ignores the sent the patriarchal system that centers male preferences and toxic value systems and assumes the male system and the male body is the default, replacing it with a new version that also allowed in women and their distinctive concerns and valued and protected them. And basically, they're saying that they're ignoring that risk in this new version of feminism, girl boss feminism, and they settle for less. I think that's what they're saying. Although, I think they're just trying to rebrand so that they can distance themselves from what they don't like about the world as it is now. But like, this is all the product of the same thing. You can rename it like a million times. You can rebrand it over and over. It doesn't change what you're doing. It doesn't change what any of the other flavors have been doing, because they're all built on the same foundation, which is shit. And yeah, it doesn't really matter. I mean, like, what's the difference really between sex positive and sex negative? What's the difference really between second wave, first wave, third wave, proto? Nothing. Not at the end of the day. Not when it comes down to like the core beliefs. It's the same. It's the same garbage. So they're just trying to rebrand and move away and use language and word games to essentially like escape criticism while also lobbing criticism. And at feminists like this, I mean, like, most of this is actually like anti-male, but most of the criticisms that are being thrown around are at essentially other flavors of crap. They're like, oh yeah, that one has corn in it, so that's worse than my garbage, than my shit, because my shit is runnier and softer.
Yeah, it's all basically the same. It's just it's just blaming men and insisting that feminism got men to care about, you know, women who are out there who are seeped in the feminist this mindset that, and this is really what it is. It's this way that you structure your relationship. So you see that feminism is what makes men care about women, as you as a woman. Why don't you just try telling a man what you want?
Yeah.
You know?
See if they do it.
See if they do it. See if they are eager to actually make you happy. You might be surprised. You might be seriously surprised. And one of the weirdest things, like, I know this is going to sound very strange, but one of the things that really drove this home for me is when I got a dog. 20,000 years we've been breeding dogs, right? We've been training them. Dog wants to make me happy. You know, he's a working line German Shepherd, so they're also bred to be highly trainable. But he likes it when he's praised, when he knows that he has done a good job. 20,000 years we've been working on an animal that used to eat us, like flat out, just eat us. That's what dogs used to do. They, you know, as wolves, they would probably eat us. And now we have an animal that actually sort of lives to make us happy, to put a smile on our face, to do what we ask it to do, you know. And human women couldn't do that with men. After 1 million years, even though female horses were successful in making a male horse that cares about its social group so much that he'll sacrifice his life to preserve it, and female dogs or female wolves managed to make male wolves that will do the same. But female humans, we didn't manage to do that. Even though we're the most vulnerable female animals on the planet, we never figured out how to compensate for those vulnerabilities by encouraging male humans to take care of us. That never happened.
Yep.
We did it with dogs, but didn't happen with male humans. Such a bunch of flaming bullshit. It's all just every single freaking ideology that's based on the idea that men don't care about women is utter crap. Utterly. Every single ideology that somehow paints every man as complicit with the most reviled group of men ever, which is rapists. And again, rapists are genetically distinct from regular men. Like these are not normal men. These are not normal men. They are abused, and then they also have impulse control problems that you can find in genetic markers. 2 times more distinct from the average man than a straight man is from a gay man. And that somehow these abnormals, these freaks, are something to do with regular men. Those ideologies are total and utterly depraved. Okay. And yet we continue to push this shit to the destruction of our own relationships. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Well,
I'm satisfied.
I'm done with the article.
Yep.
And yeah, it was painful. But we got through it. So do you
send some coin to your non-feminists, everybody listening?
Yeah.
Feedthebadger.com.
Let me look and see if we got any super chows. I don't think so. No super
we didn't.
chows. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the end of the article. So you guys want to share your thoughts, there is a link to the full thing. It's an archive link because I think you need like a membership or something. There are people who sign up to read this crap. I don't get it. Like, why? I mean, I'm not likely the kind of person to sign up for anything, but like I certainly would sign up for this. So another thing, well, I don't know if this is, I think it's kind of funny. This is another little story. There's a guy named Graham Saunis. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. And he, I don't know who he is, but he has attempted to clarify his remarks after refusing to apologize for calling football a man's game, as he gave his views on Tottenham's Premier League draw at Chelsea on Sunday. The former Liverpool player and manager's comments as a pundit on Sky Sports have been met with backlash, especially given that he was sitting next to ex-England midfielder Karen Carney at the time, and the remark came in the wake of the Lionesses' Euro 2022 success last month. You guys might know about the Lioness winning like something. It's a man game.
No, I don't. Tell us.
The Lionesses are like a soccer team, and they won the Euro 2022. Well, the women's.
So they're talking
team.
about European football.
Yeah, this is European football.
You know, I would go even, I don't know why they apologize for this. I'd go even further. Athletics generally are a male thing.
Yeah.
Our men's everything.
It shouldn't
Maybe
be
not gymnastics or figure skating. And here's why. Men take more risks. They have they're faster. They're in some ways more agile. And it's just the way it is. If you're going to say, well, we got to exclude trans women from women's sports, why? Why do you have to exclude trans women from women's sports? Is it because men are better at those sports? Okay. And then the ultimate conclusion of that is what? Most sports are actually a man thing. It's okay. You can let men have something. You won't implode into nothingness if you just let men have something. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, so I guess here's the thing. Like he was a commentator. He made a comment about, I guess, the excitement or the energy level of the football game, which Americans watching, I mean soccer game. And he got backlash because he said it's a man's game again. And or all of a sudden again. And then some people, you know, got bent out of shape, and he said, I think we've got our football back, as I would enjoy football, men at it, blow for blow, and the referee letting them get on with it. And then he was basically asked to clarify his statement and shit, but they asked him if he regretted having said that, right? And he said not a word of it.
Oh, so he didn't apologize.
No, he did not apologize.
Good.
He clarified. He said, well, I was talking about the men's game when I was talking about men. But, I mean, I think anyone can enjoy football. But when they said, well, did you regret having said that? He said, nope, not a word of it. So.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All this discussion. Why do people want to exclude trans women from women's sports? It's because they will dominate them.
Oh
Why
yeah.
will they dominate them? Because men and trans women who have the benefit of a male musculature and testosterone for however long they had it are more physically capable. Sport is inherently a domain where men dominate. Period. You cannot have it both ways. Just acknowledge it, ladies. You're not going to die.
Yeah. Well, but I think the main takeaway is that he didn't apologize.
Good.
Um, because that's not, you'd never do that. Like, you knew why you said it, what you said, what you meant. People can't force you to do that. And you know that when they get all bent out of shape because you dared say the M word, you know it's all about like them. They're trying to figure out who they can essentially control. So when you say
Yeah.
no, I don't regret any of this because I know what I said. They can't make you. What are they going to do next? That's what I'm saying. Like, learn to say no to these people, and
Yeah.
they won't be able to bully you anymore.
It's all like emotional posturing with them.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know. Like I think that eventually women, I mean, there must be a point at which women realize that being celibate isn't fun. And that's
Uh
where we're going.
that's yeah, I guess they will figure that out. They will figure that out. It's just like we said before, there has to be a lot of suffering
Mm-hmm.
and
Before people start to really think about these things in an intelligent way.
yeah.
Like, is that really what you want for your life? Because here's the thing, no matter what, if your sexual partner is men, you are going to have to allow their opinions and their consent into the equation. That's just the way it goes. I'm
Hmm?
sorry, feminists, but men have a right to consent. They have a right to sex that they find satisfying. And you know what? There's a lot of men who have sex they don't find satisfying. And they find it incredibly pressuring. And they don't feel like they can be vulnerable in it. Because if they were, they would no longer have sexual partners. Okay? If you actually listen to the pressures on men when it comes to sex, it would turn your blue hair white.
Yep.
Because you guys have the ability to pontificate, to express yourselves in a large podium. When have we ever had the discussion of the pressures on men sexually? When have we ever had the discussion on men's right to be vulnerable sexually? When have we ever had the discussion on what men are owed from women sexually? That's right. You aren't allowed to have that. In fact, if you have that discussion, you just might be a terrorist. Is that not right? Am I
Yep.
being too loud? But
No, you're
seriously.
good. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right. I've said my piece. All right.
I think we're good.
We're good.
No more super chats or super chows, I don't think. But yeah, no on that front. But yeah, we're good. Let me also look at Rumble. Look, no one's there. It's sad. Okay. That's all right. Usually Mr. 0303 is on Rumble commenting, but he's like out of town right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess we could wrap this up. Do you want to say
Yep.
any final thingies
Oh,
and
you can support
whatnot?
us at feedthebadger.com if you like this content. Please do, because we are the only reason why we continue to exist is because you guys support us. YouTube doesn't, although I think YouTube, I don't know what YouTube is. YouTube is strange. It's a
Yeah.
strange place. It's a weird, I don't know what's going on. But anyway, like I said, we exist because you support us. So please go to feedthebadger.com and help us out. You can start a subscription and join us for the patron only after show, or you can give us a one-time support at feedthebadger.com/just the tip. If you send us a message and it's not a freaking novel, please don't send like essays. If you want to send an essay, we won't read it out loud just simply because we don't want to spend half an hour with an essay on the show, but I will put it into the patron Discord for them to chew over and discuss. And I may make some commentary on that too, as well. So it will go somewhere. It just won't be read out loud if it's longer than the article that we're actually responding to. Just so try to keep, if you want it read on air, please keep it to like a tweet length. That would be very appreciated. But I do read everything that's sent through. Anyway, so that once again, that's feedthebadger.com. So back to you, Brian.
Okay, so if you guys like this video, please smash the like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications so you know when our streams go live. Follow us on alternative media like Rumble, Twitch, DLive, and Facebook and Twitter. Those all go live at the same time, so you can, and because I use Restream chat, you can actually talk with people in other places. You know, like if you're there on Facebook and you're on Twitter, for example, they'll see your messages. And yeah, so please consider following us on alternative media just in case we get yeeted from YouTube forever. Who knows? It could be never, it could be now, you know. And most importantly, leave us a comment and share this video. Comments are very good because it does help with the algorithm. It shows some engagement. We like to look at, you know, what your guys' thoughts are on these things, and hopefully like it reaches other people. And of course, sharing the video is like the best thing you could do. So thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame, and we will talk to you guys in the next video. Have a good one, everybody.
Men's rights activists are